Money in the World is the latest film from director Ridley Scott, and it tells the true story of when Italian kidnappers kidnapped John Paul Getty III, played by Charlie Plummer. And since he is a member of the Getty family, which is known as the most richest family ever because of John Paul Getty I, the kidnappers ask for a $17 million ransom. So the mother, played by Michelle Williams in this movie, tries to persuade her former father-in-law, John Paul Getty, played by Christopher Plummer, to pay the ransom, and the rest of the movie is about trying to get him to budge on paying the ransom and also trying to locate where the son actually is. Now, this movie's pretty famous, but before we get to the thing that everyone has heard about, I just kind of want to mention the crazy production the film has always kind of had. Like around March of this year, not 2016, of this year, is when Ridley Scott was like talking about, yeah, I think I'm gonna make this movie next. Like 2 months before Alien Covenant came out, which was like the only Ridley Scott film coming out this year for a while, he was talking about, I want to make this movie. And then around May, they actually casted and they began filming on the 31st of that month, and I think they ended around July. So this movie always had a crazy kind of production as far as how quick it was to come out. However, the big thing that everyone knows about, Kevin Spacey, formerly playing John Paul Getty. Of course, because of those allegations, Ridley Scott, because the crazy man he is, instead of postponing the film a year to like rework it, actually decided we can film this in 10 days with replacing Kevin Spacey with Christopher Plummer, who was my original choice, and that's what they went with. It's just kind of amazing to me that they went from a really rushed production to having to rush some reshoots with an actor who doesn't really have a lot of time to really get into the character because they really have to get this done. It's just astounding to me that Ridley Scott, as a director, was able to pull this off, and even though this isn't like an amazing film in my eyes, it's a really good film, however. I think Ridley Scott deserves at least some recognition for being able to just wrangle all of this together to actually get this film out on time, because it looked like the odds were against him, but it turns out they weren't. Because my original concern about the reshoots is, did Christopher Plummer have enough time to get into the mindset of John Paul Getty? Does he have enough time? And it turns out he did. I thought Christopher Plummer did an excellent job in this film, very good. Just because of curiosity, though, I kind of would like to see a Kevin Spacey cut. They're not going to do it, obviously, but in my wildest dreams, if they could just put it out there just for curiosity reasons of comparing, I would like to see it, to see if that rubber mask on Spacey is as distracting as it was in the trailer. But nonetheless, Plummer did an excellent job in this film, portraying just how greedy and dirty John Paul Getty kind of was in real life. I knew he was kind of a douche because he loves money and he was one of the richest guys in the world back then, but just to see like what his character kind of does in this film, I was just like, oh my god, really? You're gonna go that far? And you're probably wondering if the reshoots are kind of seamless, if you can tell. You can tell, but it's very minimal. Like, if you pay attention enough, you can kind of tell that Mark Wahlberg, in the scenes that he's in with Christopher Plummer, his cheeks are kind of a little more like, instead of being like just kind of like a little more puffed out, like they're a little thinner, I guess you could say, if I had to describe it. Like, other than that, that's really the only way you could kind of tell that it was like not supposed to be Christopher Plummer originally, but other than that, it's a seamless transition. And speaking of Mark Wahlberg, who plays this former CIA operative who is an advisor to John Paul Getty and also Michelle Williams' Gale, and he was also very good, especially with the scenes he was in with Michelle Williams. Those two had really good chemistry in this film. They need to work together properly, but Mark Wahlberg's kind of methods of trying to deal with any situation is maybe a little different to what she's used to, especially because she's never really been in this situation before and she's just trying to work through it. So these two together in this film were very well realized as far as what their performances needed. However, I think Michelle Williams was the standout of this entire film. She has to go through a lot playing the mother character of this film, dealing with a lot of emotions, but having to keep strong about it. That's one of the things that you can hear repeated in the film, like, why isn't she crying? Her son has been kidnapped. Why isn't she crying? And it looks like in a lot of scenes like she's on the verge of it, but she's able to just like keep it bottled up and stay strong, you know? And that was like a really good performance to see from her. Like, to see Michelle Williams actually pull that off, I was really impressed with her in this movie, and I know a lot of people are going to be paying attention to, oh, Christopher Plummer, he's very good because he shot in 10 days. And yes, he's excellent, but Michelle Williams, for me, like, she was the standout. And now we get to the part of the movie where you're either going to enjoy it like I did, or you're not going to like it so much, is that this movie is very dialogue heavy. It is a biographical film about what actually happened during the kidnapping of J. Paul Getty III, and there are a few thrilling sequences involving the kidnapping stuff, but there isn't like an action scene. If you actually thought there was going to be one in this based on a true story film, there's no like moments of like real Hollywood intensity going on here. The thrilling sequences in this film actually happened in real life, and it's nothing that's really like entertaining in the sense of like, oh, I'm having fun with this sequence. It's really just kind of nail-biting on the edge of your seat kind of stuff, but that's not really the majority of the film. The majority of this film is very dialogue heavy, and if you're not really into films with a lot of dialogue, then this might not be the film for you. However, I was actually pretty enthralled with a lot of what was going on, mainly because I really felt for the characters through the performances. Michelle Williams immediately captured my attention with her performance of the mother, and Christopher Plummer was just, like, obviously, J. Paul Getty, like, he's a very fascinating older man, so Christopher Plummer playing him and the stuff that he says, like, when you actually kind of explore his ideology in some ways, like, it's very fascinating stuff to see. So for me, even though this movie is very dialogue heavy, it isn't like a boring kind of dialogue heavy film. I thought it was very engaging. I will say though that at first it is a little slow, mainly because of how the opening is kind of structured. It opens with the kidnapping, but then the next scene is the actual like background of like, oh, here's what happened in the past, and it's like, okay, we kind of just saw the kidnapping though, can we get back to that? And it's not like the flashback was kind of a bad scene to have, it's just maybe it was in the wrong place, that's all. But once we get back to present events, that's when the movie really got going for me. However, even though I was admiring the kidnapping subplot, what they were doing with that, and Charlie Plummer, not related to Christopher Plummer by the way, Charlie Plummer did a good job playing John Paul Getty III. He is a very good young actor in this film, and he has to deal with a lot also. I just wish that they spent a little bit more time delving into the mind of Getty III just a little bit more while he's in here, because they show a lot from, I guess, the kidnapper's perspective, if I had to describe it. It doesn't really feel like there's a lot of focused on Getty III as far as what he's feeling when he's in here. Just a few moments he'll try to escape where he's interacting with the kidnappers. I just wish that there was just a little bit more of a feel of anxiety coming from him as opposed to just, well, he's kidnapped now. Once again, they do a lot of great stuff filmmaking-wise and writing-wise with that subplot, but just, I think there could have been a little bit more from Getty III's character as far as what he was going through then, as far as like psychologically. To close off my thoughts, I have one smaller flaw with this film, is that the cinematography is also just, it's a good like cinematography-wise as far as like setting up shots, but it's really the color palette that's really getting me, because for the most part I wasn't minding it, you know, it looked good, but there's just a few moments where it gets a little too dark, I guess, and you can't really like see like what's going on. And then there's also moments where the color palette was just kind of distracting. I was just like, you could just brighten it a little bit, especially because there are other moments where the screen is like fully like lit and bright, but there's just other moments where it's just kind of a weird contrast. So this movie is not without its flaws. It's definitely not a perfect film. It's really probably only gonna get recognized for like a lot of its great performances though, which honestly I don't really mind that lot, because the performances in this film are actually really fantastic. I hope this film gets attention for that, because both Christopher Plummer and Michelle Williams, personally the standout for me, did an excellent job in their roles. Even Mark Wahlberg and Charlie Plummer, and even the kidnappers, there's one actor playing them that I thought was really good here. So there's a lot of great acting going on. The dialogue is also really engaging to watch, and despite the slow start that the film kind of had, I was easily kind of brought into everything once the film got going. I'm gonna give All the Money in the World a B+. I don't think it's a movie you really need to see as far as best list or anything like that, because for me it's just a really good biographical film. It's nothing amazing, nothing that'll blow you away. It is worthwhile to see though, just to see how Ridley Scott pulled it off and how seamless a lot of it is as far as transitioning from Spacey to Plummer. It's got some really thrilling moments, it's got some really great dialogue scenes, performances are all great. If you weren't planning on seeing All the Money in the World originally, I would still recommend you do so. But if you've seen All the Money in the World, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and tomorrow, best and worst list, I'm going to be filming them and then I'm going to be editing them. Best list will be coming out first. So see you guys then, and until then, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.